Hello friends and greetings for the day. Welcome back to another tutorial on ISTQB Foundation level sample paper discussions where we are talking about the tips, tricks and time management related to this examination. As a part of this particular tutorial, we are stepping into the chapter 5 of set D and shall be looking forward to understand some of the interesting questions and their best possible tips and tricks related to them. So let's get started. The very first question of chapter 5 we have for you is question number 30, and it says which of the following best defines exit criteria in a testing project? At a very high level, quick recollection, exit criteria are those set of criterion which determines the testing is complete and we have achieved our goals and objectives and we can go ahead and stop testing. That means no more testing is required and we are good to go ahead and stop testing and hand over the product to the business. And in these given options, all we have to find out is those criterion which talks about something which is achieved or completed. Let's get going. The very first option we have for you is the budget is approved. Of course, you know approvals for the budget happens right in the beginning of the project. So this cannot be an exit criteria. This can only be an entry criteria to get started. Okay. Option B says budget runs out. Of course, budget running out is out of budget, and that's one of the very bad termination criteria and can be included in the exit criteria, saying that we do not have any more budget to do testing and this is where we have to stop it. So this could be another way of saying exit criteria. Whereas option C says test basis is available. Test basis is available as straightforward entry criteria because when it is available, we get started with analyzing the basis and finding anomalies in that. If I talk about option D, it says test cases achieved at least 80% of statement coverage. I would like to put some light on this because this could be a tricky thing because 80% coverage is not determined anywhere and it's not necessary that you should achieve 80% coverage to stop testing. So they just want you to start thinking so that you can wait and consume your time to conclude on the answer. So it's not about 80% at all. It's more about understanding this type of thing can be an exit criteria or entry criteria. Of course, thoroughness measure is a part of exit criteria, and I can certainly consider a percentage coverage on statement, decision, branch, or requirement as an exit criteria itself. Let this be the cutoff, what the business would have defined. So we don't have to start pondering, rather we have to conclude. So let's look at the option E. Option E says all test analysts are ISTQB certified at the foundation level. All test analysts are certified is not or can never be an exit criteria. Rather, it could be an entry criteria to the project that we want only certified people to work on this project and defining it as a prerequisite or more of like an entry criteria. So I think this is how you need to judge that what exactly would let you start something and what exactly would let you complete and declare it is over and we can stop. And that's how we can go ahead and straightforward conclude that the right answer for this particular question are B, that is budget runs out, and D, test case achieved at least 80% of statement coverage. So this is all you need to do. But at the same time, quick reminder, remember that how many options you are reading. Of course, in the examination, it will be clearly specified that how many options you have to select, but always you have to keep your eye on that, whether it is 4 options or 5 options. Let's move on to the next question. The next question we have for you is 31. And this question is about estimation. It says the team wants to estimate the time needed for one tester to execute 4 test cases for a software component. If you start looking at my pressurization, I'm talking about one tester to execute 4 test cases, right? So these numbers would play a vital role when you're estimating. The team has gathered the following measures of the effort used to execute a single test case. Most important thing to remember at this point of time that they want you to calculate the time for 4 test cases, but the numbers what they are giving you is for single test case. So that is where most of the people will go wrong, and I'll prove that how options would be very interesting and catchy to go wrong. Let's continue further. So we have got 3 estimates here. So of course we are using 3-point estimation. Best case scenario 1 hour, worst case scenario 8 hours, and most likely scenario is 3 hours. Given that the 3-point estimation technique is being used, what is the final estimate of the time needed to execute all 4 test cases? So, quick reminder, you have been given the data and estimate for 1 test to be executed. They want the 4 tests to be executed. So whatever you find at the end of the day, it should be multiplied by 4 to pick the right answer. So let's start calculating and solving this. First of all, we remember the formula of estimate is A plus 4 times the M plus B divided by 6, right? At this point, we certainly understand A represents the most optimistic estimate, M represents the most likely estimate, and B represents the most pessimistic estimates. So I can take this as respectively each one of them. So if I just go ahead and put this into the values, best estimate I have is 1 hour, so A goes as 1, 4 times the 3 hour, and then B as the 8 hour. If I just do this calculation, I would get at the end of the day, for example, 4 into 3 is 12, 12 plus 8 is 20, and then you have 21, and then you have 21. Yeah, it's 4, 3, 12 plus 8, 20 plus 1, 21 divided by 6, you will get 3.5 hours. But what is the catch? The most important catch of this question is look at the crazy options. The option says here, option A is 14 hours, option B is 3.5 hours, C is 16, and D is 12. If you see the catchiness here, the B is 3.5 hours, what we have calculated. But mind it, the question was about estimating the 4 test cases. So we need to multiply this 3.5 into 4, that is multiplied by 4, and you know the final answer, that the right answer for this particular question should be A, that is 14 hours, which would come to the final estimate for executing 4 test cases by calculating the estimates by the given input for 1 test. So this is where the most important part happens in the examination, that how attentive you are. And you can easily pick the option B as well, because that is where you calculate it. But don't forget what exactly the question is, right? Let's move on to the next. The next question we have is question number 32. And this says the table shows the traceability matrix for the test case to requirements. And we pretty much have seen this, where X means that a given test case covers the corresponding requirement. And if you quickly see the table, we have 7 requirements and 4 test cases written for that. And test case 1 is covering multiple of them. Same way test case 2 is covering a few more requirements, and test case 3. At this point of time, I remember from some of my sessions, and I would like to share with you. Some people say, how is it even possible that one test case can cover multiple requirements? Hypothetical. Let's keep it in mind, okay? There are industries who can do that depending on their product and scenario, and there are industries who would have never seen such thing happening. So we don't want you to contradict with this. You just have to believe that something like this is happening in the world. It's just me or my company who has never done this before, or my projects have never involved it, in case you do not know about it. But just for your kind of information, we do have products and projects where we have single test case covering multiple requirements. But if in case you don't know about it, treat it hypothetical as much as possible, okay? Because we don't want you to get carried away, confused, and start thinking of something else. Remember, you don't have to evaluate the question. You have to evaluate the answer for the given information, okay? Let's go ahead, and the question says, you want to prioritize the test cases following the additional coverage prioritization technique. You execute all 4 test cases. Which test case should be executed at last one? A quick reminder, we know from the syllabus there are 3 different ways to prioritize our test cases. We can go risk-based, we can go requirement-based, and we can go coverage-based. And under the coverage-based, we have additional coverage, which means the test which covers the maximum coverage will be executed first. So all we have to do is go back to the table, find out those test cases which will be covering the maximum will be prioritized first, and then the other ones. And the question is, which one will be executed last, right? So that means we don't have to tell them 1, 2, 3, rather we have to talk about the one which will be last in the order from the test execution schedule. So let's start from the top. If I see test case 1 is covering 4 requirements, test case 2 is covering 3 requirements, test case 3 is covering 2 requirements, and test case 4 is covering 1. But there's a trick involved, so you cannot just blindly make a statement that the test case 4 will be executed last. Let me tell you. The most important thing here is I will first of all go ahead and execute TC1. The reason is it covers 4 out of 7 requirements. That is requirement 1, 3, 4, and 7. So it will be executed first. Then we see that 2, 5, and 6 are still not covered. So the next test case that achieves the highest additional coverage, remember the word additional is not blank, that which covers the next 3 requirement. It should be the additional coverage, that means except the one which you have already covered. So if I go back, we look into this test case sheet, we understand the next test case which covers the additional coverage is for the remaining requirement is test case 3, which covers 2 out of 3 remaining requirement, that is 5 and 6. So test case 3 should be executed as the second one. Now the only requirement still not covered is requirement 2, which is covered by test case 4. Therefore, test case 4 should be executed as the third test case. And finally, the one which will be left is the test case 2, which finally makes my conclusion. And the clear understanding of this particular question is the right answer for this particular question, B, that is test case 2, will be executed at last. So in case you have any confusion with the concept that what we just discussed, you are free to go back to the tutorial. You'll find this on the I button, and you can just quickly recap what did we cover about the additional coverage of the prioritization. Let's move on to the next. The next question we have for you is question number 33. And it says, how can the testing quadrant be beneficial for testing? Testing quadrant, testing pyramid, in all other 3 sets also we have discussed multiple times. It basically talks about 2 important things: the amount of testing done at a level and amount of automation done at a test level. And we want to also highlight that some particular levels are very important to be executed with more number of test cases and high automation compared to that of the other one. So let's start reading the option. And option A says, they help in test planning by dividing the test process into 4 stages corresponding to the 4 basic test levels, that is component, integration, system, and acceptance. Number one thing to remember from here, that testing quadrant have nothing to do with describing the relationship between the test levels. It's more about those levels, like if you talk about pyramid, that's something as a picturization which can talk about what to be conducted. But if I talk about the test quadrant, it talks about functional as well as non-functional, and it talks about business facing, what kind of support does it have, like critique the product or support the team. So many other things, right? Again, it does not talk about the level relationship. It talks about how we organize each quadrant and perform them. So there are 2 topics in that particular segment, that is test pyramid and test quadrant. So we should know what exactly is the ask. If I go to option B says they help in assessing the high level coverage, which is requirement coverage, based on the low level coverage, that is code coverage. Again, testing quadrants certainly cannot help in assessing any type of coverages. They only define the amount of testing to be done at which level is how much, right? So let's go to option C. Option C says they help non-technical stakeholders to understand the different types of tests, and that some test types are more relevant to certain test levels than others. Like where exactly to do what amount of automation, and where to define more detailed test cases, concrete test cases, many test cases, and where high-level test cases would be enough, where to use black box, where to use white box, where to use automation, where to use manual. These are all the things which are determined there. So C looks pretty relevant, but let's cross-check with option D as well. Option D says they help Agile team to develop a communication strategy based on classifying people according to 4 basic psychological types and on modeling the relations between them. Interesting to read, but doesn't make so much sense because testing quadrant is not a psychological model. It's typically the test levels and other things what we just discussed in the option C, but not about psychology and communication among the team. We have different other things for that. So I think that makes my job simple and to the point. The right answer for this particular question is C, that is they help non-technical stakeholders to understand the different types of tests, and that some types are more relevant to certain test levels than the others. Having very detailed information and quick comparison among the other options are very, very crucial to come to conclusions of such questions. If you have even 1% of confusion left out in any particular topic, these are the questions which will be a killer. Okay, and we don't want you to get stuck there. So make sure you pay attention to every single detail and the summarization of it. Let's move on to the next question. The next question we have for you is question number 34. And this question says, for a given risk, its risk level is $1,000 and its risk likelihood is estimated as 50%. What is the risk impact? Keeping it a little straightforward, it's a formulation thing. Number one, we should know what is the risk level. Risk level is a combination of impact and likelihood, where impact and likelihood are multiplied to get to the answer. So here we are talking about the quantitative risk analysis. And if you read the syllabus once again, you would find in the last passage of the risk assessment, it is clearly written there are quantitative measurement and qualitative measurement. In the quantitative measurement, we describe that it's a multiplication of the two numbers, right? So as simple, we have to multiply it. And they give you the values very clearly. The risk level, that means the overall value has been given to you. And likelihood is estimated as 50%, which means $500, right? So if I put this into the formula, that is risk level is equal to risk likelihood multiplied by risk impact. And if in this I know risk level, I know risk likelihood. So I'll swap the left hand side to the right hand side. So I'll get risk impact will be calculated as risk level divided by risk likelihood. This concept is basic of mathematics. LHS is equal to RHS, and we can move them and it goes as a division. So now risk impact is equal to $1,000 divided by 50%. So is equal to divided by 0.5, and that goes to certainly 2,000. So that makes my job simpler and to the point. The right answer for this particular question is B, that is $2,000 is the value of risk impact based on the given calculations, and this can be found in the syllabus. So this is how having a very perfect understanding of even minute things would make your job very, very simpler and confident enough with the right answer rather than getting it stuck. Don't forget one golden statement: be attentive to details. You skip any detail, you get different answers, right? So that's all from this particular tutorial, team. Should you have anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm always there to address your queries and answer them well. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, keep understanding the context. Thanks for watching the video, team, and happy learning.